Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. This is episode 212. If you're keeping track, and no, Dave, that does not count the missing episode. But my name's Aaron. With me, as always, the other members of the Who Dat Jedi Council, Dave and Fredo. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
So, did you have a Merry Swiftmas or Swifty Graw? What are we calling it? What are we calling it?
No, I've heard Swiftmas, I've heard Swiftoween, and I've heard what was it, Swifty Growl, which I'm like, that's the one I'm less to because that means fat Swifties, and that's unfair. That's
So,
not nice.
that, yeah, okay. Well, so yeah, because if you're not from New Orleans, if you listen to us elsewhere, yeah, Taylor Swift was here this past weekend, sold out shows Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in the Superdome, right? So, um,
Super sold
Did you
out.
see the economic impact figures on that?
$500 million, is that what I saw brought into the
Yeah.
Half a
city?
bit, half a Billy, half a Billy.
So, I mean,
Yeah. She came in here and literally saved the town because there was people were suffering. I know the restaurants and bars and other businesses were suffering. It's
I
been a
mean,
slow year.
and especially we're in that weird. So I play gigs downtown, and it is amazing to me. It's like you can. It's like once Labor Day or once Memorial Day hits, it is like somebody just shut the door to the city. It's like, I mean, places are dead, and businesses do struggle. And then after Labor Day, it kind of starts kicking up a little bit. It's been dragging though, but this did kind of help out a bunch. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it was sorely needed. Two things. By the way, on a totally tangential, but not really, but kind of personal note, let's put out a tweet Saturday because we were out and about doing a couple of things. And one, you could see lines everywhere, not just like the big touristy spots, but every restaurant, every store. The fan base was out and about shopping. They were down. They were. Lizzie, our friend, said that she ran into a whole bunch of them by the scare house, the scare house this year. They're all petting her pup and whatnot. So they're all over the city. They were spending money everywhere. They
No,
were buying art. They were as part of the fabric this weekend as they could themselves allow themselves to be in. It was awesome.
obviously we get a couple of those times in the year, right? I mean, we
Hmm.
get Essence Fest, we get Mardi Gras, it's
Jazz Fest,
Jazz
Jazz
Fest.
Fest. Yeah.
So so this is one of those things. Those we always plan on, right? Because it's
Hmm.
like they're going to be here every year.
Hmm.
But just to having an artist come in and do this, that was yeah. So anyway,
And really, and I think what I was going to say was, I mean, like even just mentioning how out there they were and how friendly they were, because they were being really nice to everybody, and even like my little tweet did like the biggest numbers I've ever done on any kind of tweet or post ever in my lifetime, and I was like, holy crud, this is another level. So the Super Bowl's coming in a few weeks to New Orleans. I imagine even though there'll be as many people, the vibes will not be the same.
we shall see. We shall see. All I know is that I had to have my wife drive me to my gig because parking rates like more than tripled. So
Mhm.
that is kind of the the downside of these big events is that, I mean, capitalism kicks in. But anyway,
Mhm.
um, so yeah, so tonight, well, first of all, we're not going to talk about the Saints. So yeah,
Mhm.
we can talk about the Pelicans play tonight. I think
They are.
we're
They are.
we're recording this on the Tuesday night. Fredo is decked out in LA Dodgers gear because and he has the game on in the background. So if he starts cheering and swearing and everything like that, we'll forgive him. Um, and I can't tell if Dave is frozen on our call or
No.
I'm just looking straight up your nose the entire time here. So okay, but we are a couple days from Halloween, and so that's what I want to do before we because well the topics of tonight we're going to actually delve into um, can we tell more Star Wars stories in the original trilogy era, and the other part of it, would you be okay with animated stories with Han, Luke, and Leia? I think that one was kind of designed towards me because I've taken a firm stance on how I feel about recasting. So anyway, we're going to be talking about those, just having a little bit of a kind of a thought experiment on some of this stuff. But I wanted to start off, first of all, just like I said, we're a couple days from Halloween. Do you guys have any? Let's just talk about Halloween in general. Any big like Halloween traditions that you adhere to? Do you get excited about Halloween? I get excited about Halloween. I decorate my house and everything. So
That's the thing down here that you don't see in a lot of other towns is the decorations.
oh yeah,
I know that some places do that, but um, it's like a house here or a house there. But this is more like Christmas decorations here. And then so you get Halloween decorations and then Christmas decorations, and then you go right into Mardi Gras decorations. And so like you've got like 4 or 5 months here where you've got sparkly lights on the front of your house. And so it's a little different here, and you can't help but sort of fall into some of that. Of course, I have kids, and they're to see it through their eyes, and you try to make it special for them, and all of those things are great. Um, but I don't know, when I hit middle school age is when I sort of like soured on the whole thing. I mean, not soured, but like you can't go trick or treating anymore. You're too old. And then that was sort of it for me for a long time, until we moved here.
I did see something. It used to annoy the crud out of me that like I guess I never cared how old anybody was showing up to my house asking for candy unless they were dressed if they were dressed in a costume. I got annoyed by the high school kids who just showed up at like wearing a hoodie, just like give me candy, type of thing. But however, I did see something this year that has kind of changed my mind on that. It's like if high school kid, shows up and is just trick or treating for candy, and doesn't matter how old they are, at least they're not out doing something else, like breaking into cars or causing other, and maybe they'll do that later, but at least at that point, they're choosing to do something that's just kind of fun. So yeah, but it is at least make an effort, so.
Yeah, and like the other part of that where you say, well, like, oh, you got to put on a costume or something. It's like, well, some of these kids they don't come from means, right?
Right.
And there's that too. There's that angle to it where it's like, well, yeah, I want some candy, but I don't have the ability to like go out and purchase myself a costume, and my parents can't afford to buy me a costume. So yeah, like it's different. It's way different. Like you see this sort of like mentality from folks in the suburbs or in the Midwest or wherever, where it's like, oh, I I don't like them coming into our neighborhood if they don't live here. Like that's another thing you hear from people. Like you're not from this neighborhood, so why are you coming into my neighborhood? And it's like I don't care. I just don't care. Again, like if you are here asking me for a treat, I'm like, well, cool.
And
You want it, and I have it. I can provide that, and that's the spirit of the season.
if your porch light is on, the expectation is that you have something to give out.
Be home.
Yes.
See, I'm the trick or treat dad. I'm taking my kids out. We're walking around the neighborhood, and a lot of these people have these fancy decorations up, 12-foot skeleton and everything else, and they got their little lights on. There ain't nobody there, or they are there, and they won't answer the ding door.
What I've
like,
done in the
buy
past,
some friggin' candy and just be ready.
What I've done in the past when Britt and I have been gone, like I said, because we're all I will just put a bowl of candy out and say take one, and if the first kid takes 15 or takes it all, I don't care, whatever. But yeah, but we don't get many trick or treaters in our neighborhood though.
No, and that's kind of the weird thing. I mean, and not weird, but the realistic thing. I think the pandemic, one of the things that's shifted is trick or treating because I think more parents are doing more of the school trick or treating or the trunk or treating or event parties. They're doing stuff together where they can control the environment.
That
They
was
vet who's bringing candy, whatever. So
that
the
was
I
long
can't.
before the pandemic, but I have some thoughts that I will not get into right now.
But
So
yeah, but it's also true. I mean, because I remember I moved here when I was 11, so maybe I had 1 year of trick or treat, and that was it. Like, okay, kid. Plus, being bigger than most, Dave can relate to this. As you look older than you do before you're too old to trick or treat.
the only
So, unfortunately, my connection to Halloween. Now, I will still watch Halloween the movie every year in Halloween because that is tradition and I enjoy it. I'll watch a few horror movies because that's really where the vibes is. Now, I'll also say I recognize that Halloween is a bigger deal other parts of the country because it's the one time of the year where you can decorate and costume up and act silly. It's the one time of the year where it's permissible to do the kinds of things that we spend the entire Mardi Gras season doing. See, that's the other thing. It's like here, you don't just go to the store and buy a costume. Here, you make your own costume. Here, you throw your own party. So since everybody does that from January 6th through uh, Shrove Tuesday, there's no reason for you to, Halloween kind of hits differently. It feels more like a family thing, except for in the quarter.
so I don't ever remember. Pardon me. Any of the costumes that I had growing up. I probably,
None?
the plastic masks. I do with the
Yeah.
like little slit cut out for a mouth. I do
Oh
remember
yeah.
those, but I will remember one. I remember one of my friends, and he was kind of the looking back. He was the rich kid in the school because he showed up and he was, I mean, head to toe Admiral Akbar. He had, it was the rubber mask and he had the hands and everything, and it just was full out Admiral Akbar. I just remember thinking, I think what I was probably in sixth grade, I was just like, that is way cool, So anyway, I do remember him dressing up as Admiral Akbar. So,
I was the headless horseman one year,
oh, cool.
which I wanted to do that, and my mom had to figure out how to help me make that costume. And what we did is we put like pillows on like my shoulders and put me in an adult size shirt, button up shirt. And so like positioned all the stuffing and the pillows and whatnot in the shirt so as to make me look headless. And I was peeking out through the like a hole in the shirt, but it was impossible to see anything. Can you imagine like at night we're stumbling around in the dark and like having to like try not to die, basically walking everywhere. But I'm still here. I pulled it off. And the other thing we would do is we would make chili. We would eat chili, and we do that now. Um, my wife makes us chili. So
When it's 80 degrees, yeah.
well,
I mean, yeah. Fredo, any? Do you remember any costumes or anything like that?
Not really. Like I said, I only have 1 year of costume. I don't even remember what we went as. Maybe maybe just bought a Spider-Man mask or whatever. I think I I think honestly that it's one of those things where you're just more accustomed. Okay, you go to the store, you buy it, you wear it, and then you come back and deal with sort through your candy or whatever, and it ends up being all right. Now, I guess one of the questions I would have now is, do you does your job allow you to costume, and do you do it when they want you to? Because like my job's like, oh yeah, everybody wear costumes on Thursday for Halloween, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be wearing a costume.
I wore my
This,
stormtrooper armor when I was teaching on Halloween.
and how did you see through that?
Well, I mean, I took the helmet off when I was conducting, but otherwise,
Oh.
so um,
Otherwise, you'd be up there with the helmet.
the
that was probably a hit.
however, now working remotely, no. Otherwise, it's just me being a creep dressed up in something, by myself. I don't have any meetings.
You got
Um,
trick or treaters that'll come by the house though
Mhm.
potentially. You get dressed up for them.
so, um, by the way, okay, so cool. A little bit of Halloween talk. Can't wait. I love Halloween. I always just love Halloween.
Mhm.
Um,
It's
I got,
it's the unofficial start of the holiday season.
yeah.
You get none but holidays from now through the spring.
Agatha all along, still a fan. They that I mean, if you have not watched some of the, and we're not going to talk about this in depth here, but if you have not watched any of the like breakdowns and everything, like on Screen Crusher, New Rock Stars, holy cow! I mean, watch those because they're the writing for this show and the design of this show. They're really knocking it out of the park. They're doing a good job. So to the listeners out there, yeah, it's a good show. I don't know. Do you two disagree on the surface of that?
No, not at all.
Nope. No,
And
I think one of the smart things that Marvel has done is they've timed this release, much like Werewolf by Night last year, to coincide it. It's hitting the right need at the right time. And first of all, the show's just awesome and fun in so many different ways. But also, it's coming at the moment when you most want it. I mean, you could put Agatha all along and still be good, say in March,
Right.
but I don't think people
Did
are
Fredo
having as much fun with it as they are now. Did I freeze?
You froze up for a second. But yeah, and
Oh,
you
apologies.
were
No, that was
gesturing
just
wildly too. It was pretty awesome. Um,
yeah, no, I was just saying, I think Marvel's doing such a tremendous job because of they're timing it appropriately. I think this show's coming together at the right moment when people want this kind of
but
thing,
see, that's the
and it's connecting. That's just smart.
but I agree that it's a good timing, but I don't think that it is still. It could have been
Mm,
released in March, and I would still think that this is a
mm.
really well designed and put together show. Dave, your comments before we yeah.
I really want us to gather our thoughts when we decide we're going to sit down and do a whole show. I think we'll dedicate a show to that one because it's really
Work.
good, and we all three like it. And there are a lot of people that don't like it, and it's not just again we have a conversation about that. That's not just it's the flaming idiots
There are too
who
many girls in
yeah,
my show, and
yeah.
they're
And so
all
can we talk
old.
about
Yeah.
what are the actual critiques of the show? What are the actual strengths? And I look forward to that because again, like it's not perfect, but I've really liked it a lot too. The vibes for me are pretty much on point and perfect, and I like some of the literary references and so
Hmm.
forth. So it's good.
Well, all right. Well, let's do a little bit of trivia here, real quick, and then we'll get into all the Star Wars stuff. So, Fredo, to you first.
Mhm.
How many claws does an Acklay use to walk?
Hmm.
How many claws does an Acklay use to walk?
I'm gonna go backwards. I'm gonna say only one.
Ooh, that my guess was correct.
What
Six.
was it?
Six.
Six?
Answer is
Huh.
six. Yeah.
Okay. See, I was thinking it's either gonna be exactly. It's either gonna be like
One. What
one
is he?
claw.
What did he pogo around? What Acklay did you
Oh,
see?
wait, hold on. Because here's my thing. I was thinking how many claws in each extremity. I thought, okay, is there one?
Oh, but
That's what I
no,
thought
they
you
were
meant.
asking. Yeah, I was asking how
How
many
many? It's asking how
extremities.
many extremities it has. That's different.
No, well, so anyway, okay. See, now you know
Okay.
how I feel at bar trivia when they have bad questions about Star Wars. So,
The discussion was poorly written.
by the way, I'll never forget when we went and played trivia out at the pizza place out in Kenner,
Mhm.
and the question was, what was the name of what was the number of the trash compactor? And it was 3263827, and we're like the only ones that got it right. And they came over to the table and said, "How did you know that?" So it's like, "Hi, sir, I'm a nerd." All right. Oh, from Fredo's hardball question to Dave's softball question: what color is the uniform of a TIE fighter pilot? What color is the uniform of a TIE fighter pilot?
Not to be confused with Darth Vader.
They
Black.
always are. They always are. Yeah, it is black. Yep. So, all right. See, and Fredo's mad. Look, he's got like Look at that face. All right. To me, who blames Queen Amidala for the presence of battle droids on Naboo? Who blames Queen Amidala for the presence of battle droids on Naboo? Well, that would be Boss Nass. Said you brought the Machinex here. Yes, it is Boss Nass. All right, we're ready to go. We got some news. One was breaking today.
Yeah, let's start with that one because that's fun and the other ones are less fun. We've talked before, Fan Expo New Orleans coming at the start of the new year here in New Orleans. And we already kind of mentioned that there's going to be a big Back to the Future Friday night. But if you decide to go Saturday and or Sunday,
High
you
School
too.
Musical. Oh, sorry.
Well, that Well, I don't know if he would do High School Musical. It would be interesting if he could. Our one and only Anthony Daniels will be there, appearing both Saturday and Sunday. So if you have a poster of a movie that you like and or figure that you want to sign, he will be doing autographs. He will be attending.
Just
And C3P himself will be in our fair city.
just not the X-rated C3PO Topps card.
No,
Don't have that signed because he won't sign it, and he's been known to
that
rip it up.
is.
So
He polices his own merch table. He's a lot like one of those former professional athletes who whenever you try to slip them a bit of like their rivals college football rival merch, they'll see it and they go, "No, we're not signing that." Chuck it up to the side. So just be aware of that because it's if you want his autographs, it's about $120. If you only want a
I
photo,
will.
it's only $110.
I will tell you. A couple fan expos ago, Henry Winkler was there. You know, the Fonz, and people were just talking about how wonderful of a person he was. It's like people walking by the table, and he would call them over, and he was just so nice and so generous, and just I'm glowing about him. I will tell you that Anthony Daniels is kind of the opposite. Anthony Daniels is really impressed with his position as C3PO in the Star Wars universe. Still, I've gotten his autograph before. I've met him, but like I said, he's yeah. I mean, he's it's not like yeah. I don't know.
An acquired taste, much like C3PO himself.
Just know that expect maybe some sarcasm. Expect maybe kind of a little bit of coldness. So anyway, yeah.
That might be an idea for a future episode. Just the experience of meeting these actors, these cast members, and kind of give some tips of potential future attendees of okay, if you're going to go meet say Jonas Suotamo versus Anthony Daniels versus Mark Hamill, those kind. Okay, what can you expect, and now what can you know about them before you step up and start gushing over them?
Now
Because that might not be the
I will tell you what I will do because I am now that he's coming. I would like to have him sign my Rogue One poster, so I'll put aside some gig money and then I'll report back on how nice of a guy he was to our podcast. So maybe who knows? Maybe he is now like just the coolest most loving person on the planet. But it's like he's got kind of a reputation of being. I'm trying to think of a word that Dave won't McClunky out. So, yeah, just
an acquired taste.
Yeah, kind of.
Well,
So,
by the way, and maybe before we move on, and this is a question you'll answer best. Then, is this something that you found amongst original trilogy cast members that differs from say prequel or sequel cast members? Because a lot of those guys, I mean, they're signing up for a role in a movie and they're expecting to do my gig and move on. If you're somebody who signed for the prequels and or the sequels, you're signing up to quote unquote Star Wars. It's a different dynamic. You know you're signing up for all the adoration and all the vitriol.
he's kind of the only one that David Prowse,
Hmm.
I guess, kind of people found him to be kind of grumpy. I didn't. I just found him to be kind of, I don't know.
There for the money.
He was also very proud of the fact that he was Darth Vader and really ticked off that people saw James Earl Jones as Darth Vader. But the rest of them that I've had, autographs from and stuff like that, all wonderful interactions. So whether it's prequels or sequels or whatever.
Or
So yeah,
yeah, because it's always an interesting thought experiment. I mean, they were signing up for a role, they did the role, they went on, to the
here's the
next job. Whole different world, before, I mean, even though back then you still had fan media and fan whatever, but it was completely different to what it is now. It's a
here's
whole
the
industry now.
here's the thing, and not to belabor
Mhm.
this,
Mhm.
but I'm going to belabor it. I like what Geddy Lee from Rush said in a documentary. He said if he decided long ago if somebody wants to come up and say hi and ask for an autograph, I can give them 5 seconds of my time to do that. You know,
Hmm.
it's like they're he understands that. It's like just if they're going to say I appreciate what you've done, you know, yeah, I can give that amount of time. It's kind of the be nice first. Now there are some people that like Neil Peart would not do any fan meet or greet because it wasn't that he was a jerk, it was that it creeped him out and he was kind of almost agoraphobic kind of a way. It was in a way, um, but it's like I guess I don't know if especially if you're charging somebody money to come sign something, then be nice. I guess
Turn on
is
the
kind of
charm.
I mean it just you don't have to do a dog and pony show for him, but just like hey, what's your name, man? All right, Dave. Cool, Dave. Where you live here in New Orleans? Sweet, and talk about just nice to meet you. All right, and but don't yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I get off that. So move on. Move
Oh
on.
yeah. Okay, we'll move on from the nice news to the less nice news. So, kind of the big news that broke last week was that screenwriter Stephen Knight, who had been tasked, the latest to be tasked with coming up with a screenplay for the new Jedi Order movie that Daisy Ridley is headlining, has exited the project, according to Deadline. They're searching for a new screenwriter. They haven't found anybody. The Deadline's report states that director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is still attached to direct. Daisy Ridley is still attached to star, and I think she did a podcast and which said she's still excited for whatever's coming. So she has some idea what the plan is. But unfortunately, this is now the third screenwriter who's exiting this project after Damon Lindelof and Justin Britt Gibson have left it. And according to Disney and Lucasfilms, there are no impacts yet to the two Star Wars release dates that are on hold. Currently, there's one for December 18, 2026. We expect that to be Mandalorian and Grogu. There's another one for the next year, December 17, 2027. So,
I've heard.
no idea.
Have
Mhm.
you guys heard smatterings? I heard rumors that the Mandalorian Grogu, the Filoni thing, is going to be a trilogy.
Wouldn't surprise me. I hadn't heard that, but it
So
wouldn't
I mean
surprise me. I mean,
or who knows? Maybe not a trilogy, but maybe that mystery, date that's sitting there we don't know what it's attached to. Maybe that's part two of the Mandalorian Grogu movie. Who knows? But I sent you guys, the when you posted that, I was like shocked, shocked, not that shocked. It still goes into what is going on. I mean, is like the people get hired by Lucasfilm and becomes like the worst place in the world to work? I mean, I just to me there's just something going on, something weird here. I don't get it. But again, we don't have to belabor it. But it's not just the Daisy Ridley movie. It's let's pick a movie, let's pick a project, and I don't know. Do they not pay well enough? The meal's not good. I don't know.
I have
Dave
a
looks like he has
question.
something to say.
I have a question. When was Filoni elevated to master storyteller in charge? Was it
No.
post Rise of Skywalker, right?
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
because Mandalorian season one came out at the same time. And I think that happened after season one, so it would have happened after Rise of Skywalker. Which, if we remember, that's also the time, there's a conflation of things. There's the pandemic hitting, which means that, the old CEO is throwing the bulk of Disney's and Lucasfilm's projects on Disney Plus, which so it made sense that okay, and that's when they turned the Boba Fett movie and the Obi-Wan movie into the Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi. So there was, I think, a shift at that point towards streaming, and because Dave Filoni and uh, what's his face, John Favreau, were already rocking and rolling. They're just okay. You guys are in charge. You guys do all this. So
But okay,
That
so
was more of a like less of an actual question and more of just like
are
me
you
trying to make a point.
are you saying that it's like are the outsiders aren't fitting in
Yes.
if it's not
Yes.
within the if it's not Filoni's idea, then they're not getting much support, and so
That's
screw this, I'm
exactly what
going
I'm
home.
saying.
I
Yeah.
I
I
we
think
we
like
we
he has a very particular idea of what this universe needs to be. He was deigned fit to run this universe by the creator himself, and they are not finding a script that he likes.
and it's been for you name it. What projects? The Lando project has been up and down. The Rogue Squadron is gone. This the
Taika Waititi's movie, the trilogy that the Game of Thrones guys were going to do at one point, Ryan Johnson's trilogy that still supposedly may one day happen. We can keep going, Aaron.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
uh,
so it might be Dave. I don't know. It's like as a fan base, we've put Filoni up on this pedestal, and and I guess I have no reason to say that he's anything other than high integrity and good and everything like that.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
But
I
it
wouldn't
just
besmirch his character.
something does not pass the smell. As why is this? It's the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher for Star Wars. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Or the drummer for Spinal Tap.
right. I don't get it.
it
So
It's
just
not.
it's
it's
Yeah,
like,
go ahead, Fredo.
no, I was just gonna say it just seems weird because particularly Disney, they do everything with such fanfare. They announce all these projects. They announce all these creators that are bringing to. Oh, I mean, Stephen Knight's the creator of Peaky Blinders, which if you've been on Netflix or you go online, has such a big following, like up to and including Margot Robbie, and you're bringing him to write this movie and then direct it alongside the director of Ms. Marvel.
so
Hey, we're gonna make this, and then okay, he's now, like I said, the third famous screenwriter who's just had to go, I don't think I'm
I
delivering
mean,
what you want.
this
I'm
is
out.
why I'm going to say they need to stop doing that. They need to stop
Mhm.
announcing things, because now, whatever this movie ends up being, what the story is going to be. There's going to be a leak of what the script could have been, and you're going to have a divided fan base. And oh, the movie could have been so much better. It's crap now because of all this. If they would just keep their mouth shut until they're like 3 weeks into production, and then say, "Hey, guess what, kids? We're making a Star Wars." And it's written by this person, not being written by, but it's written by this person, it's being directed by this person, it's starring these people, and everybody goes, "Yay!" I, I just
The word troubled as an adjective is now fair game to be bandied about with this project. The troubled production or troubled inception of this film, and who would dispute any of that at this point? So um, I mean, it is what it is. Again, like, and I bring that point up not to say like Filoni's a creep or a jerk or too persnickety like Anthony Daniels, but rather that he just is trying to make sure that it's great,
and
and I I'm fine with that, but eventually you have to you know
Something out. Yeah,
poo or
something's
get
got
off the pot. Yeah.
to.
so I mean, and like you said, it's very interesting that we haven't had issue one with Mandalorian and Grogu as far as timeline, as far as anything.
Yeah.
Everything,
Principal,
everybody
principal
else has
photography's done on
trouble.
that.
It's like everybody else can't get the football to stay on the tee. I don't know. This
Mhm.
is this is weird. So it
Okay.
really does. It really does signal some sort of dysfunction within that company, and I'm waiting for somebody to write a book, because it's not like any of these movie makers or script writers are not talented.
Oh yeah, and you read and see so many interviews from people that are like, "I'd love to do a Star Wars." Like they're our generation now. Like the people who are like making filmmakers and writers and producers and directors and actors that are our age that grew up with this stuff and they're passionate about it and they're like, "Oh, I love it. I'd love to do a Star Wars at some point." And so there's no shortage of talent to draw from, but they're not hitting on whatever they need to. You know what they should do is just like throw out like the net and just bring in like, I don't know, 10, 12 people, say, write something and see what they come up with and decide like,
Well,
oh, that's the best thing that we're gonna green light X, Y, and Z, off we go. And but like, I don't know,
I'll,
you bring one person in attached to a particular project and then it doesn't work and you replace them and then it doesn't work again. And I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a bad look. It's a very bad look.
yeah. All right.
Okay, so talking about bad looks and conflict at Disney. Let's move to the next fun story. Set your calendars, write down the calendar, September 29th, 2025, because that's the date that Gina Carano's lawsuit against Disney is going to go to trial.
Well,
Uh, Disney last, Disney last week I tried to uh, get the case dismissed. Remember, she's suing Disney for um, sex discrimination and wrongful dismissal. Her attorney team, which has been backed by Elon Musk, sued Disney after Disney fired her famously a few years back from her role as Cara Dune in the not only for Mandalorian but in the suspected Rangers of the New Republic project that died, and another one Disney project, Star Wars project that died. So she's suing them. Disney has been trying to get it thrown out or whatever. Doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. So you know, the judge basically just said that if there's no need for oral argument or appeals, basically everything's going to start happening next September.
I'm actually quite surprised that they did not recast Cara Dune because, I mean, if you think about in the Iron, I mean, Rhodey, like we got over that real quick, right?
Mm.
You know, and this would have been even easier because it's not a established character that, I mean, you could have just. I'm really surprised that it didn't recast that.
Somebody I saw it online, and somebody made a point of Olympian and now current Dancing with the Stars cast member Ilona Mayer. I don't know if you've seen her. She has the look. She's an athlete. She's played rugby. She plays rugby, and she's she could slide right into that role right now if you wanted to. I mean, not sure what her acting skills are. I doubt they're any significantly worse than say um, what's her name, Gina Carano, who also came from the sporting world first. So, but at the same time, yeah, you're right. I mean, this is not a role that couldn't be played by somebody else. This is not Han Solo. This is not Princess Leia. This is not a character that has 30 plus years of established lore and acceptance by the audience. So you could have recast it, but maybe Disney didn't realize what thought all this would happen. Again, she's suing them because she has somebody paying for that
Yeah,
fancy big
well,
lawyer team.
I mean, I mean, if she was if she's was wrongfully terminated, then take Disney for what you can, whatever.
Yeah.
But I do know as a teacher there were certain things that that the school district said, if you do such and such, we'll fire you. So I mean, I don't know. I hooray. I mean, have your day in court, and I just yeah.
Mhm.
Like with every day that passes, our case has more merit because the political discourse in this country has gotten more and more extreme. Like originally, what she got into trouble with was like comparing herself to a Jew in Nazi Germany, and also um, she was spreading COVID disinformation. which is like two of those things. Like today, if she were to do it
And she was
now,
also throwing around anti-trans stuff.
that
So
too, yeah.
yeah,
And but like again, like if somebody did that today, do you think Disney would cut bait in the way that they did? And probably slap their hand and say, "Don't do that." At minimum, right? But would they cut bait?
No,
I don't
no, but
know.
you know,
I would say no, but that's a question of timing.
I've said it a bunch of times. I'll say right or wrong. I just sometimes. I mean, first of all, I'll talk out of both sides of my mouth. Is that I think if you have a platform, if you're an entertainer, if you're a sport, if you're an athlete, if you have the microphone, um, then I think you have you have the obligation to use that platform to better the world. And I'll put that caveat on it, to better the world. Spewing hate is not bettering the world. You know, so that's why I sometimes wish, because there are places that, we've like, hey, we'd like to go here in New Orleans, that, hey, we'd like to go there. And then the owner tweets out some racist or homophobic thing. And it's like, well, not going there. It's like, so we haven't been to some establishments that we've always wanted to go to because, that's how we protest with our pocketbook. And so it's like one of those things where it's like, maybe it would have been better if somebody in Disney would have just gotten to her and said, "We just shut up. You're going to be in all these things." And people, if you're an awful tool, don't let people know that you're an awful tool, because then people won't hire you. It sounds awful for me to say that, but it just seems to make business sense to, like, okay, I may be, yeah, just don't air your stuff. Like, if you want people to come to your business and not, protest it.
Yeah.
So
They might have done
No,
that, and we don't know. Like
might
they
have.
they they might have sat her down and said, "Hey, cool it." She kept at it, and
Could
then
be. Could be.
yeah,
and again, that's all going to come out within the confines of the courtroom as the case gets assessed. Because the reality is, I'm sure, and then look, in some ways, for her to get into that courtroom with Disney's team is a win in and of itself, because Disney does not like to share its secrets, whether good
But
or bad.
and
They don't like their business dragged out in front of the public.
it's the tough thing, because I have absolutely no problem with, U2 or Pearl Jam standing behind the microphone and talking politics. But I have all the problem in the world of Kid Rock getting behind the microphone and talking politics. And there's
Uh,
sometimes where I feel hypocritical by saying that, but I think the caveat I put is, like I said, making the world better.
I think it's a really good line to draw in the sand. It's like, well, like, are you doing actual harm to other people?
Right.
Like you said, if you're saying something that's transphobic, you're hurting people.
Right.
I'm sorry, you're making their lives harder. It's not okay. Um, and then like with with some of this stuff too, I knew when, okay, I graduated from college. Okay, before that, when I got to college, there was a student handbook that I had to look through,
Mm-hmm.
and quick glance at the different
That was my
thing,
point
the
about
rules,
employers. Yeah.
and it's just like I knew, like, don't do something that would jeopardize this because you want to graduate. And it's the same thing with employer. It's the same thing with anything. Like, uh, yeah, we can all say and do pretty much what we want, um, but there are consequences. There just are. So I, I don't root for Disney in these situations very often, but in this one, maybe I'd say I'm on the side of the mouse. I don't know.
Well, let's move from that because I don't think we're going to resolve that anytime soon, nor are they. Again, we're talking a year from now that this is going to come to a head if they don't come to a settlement, which that's a whole other thing. Um, to another trouble project. So last week it was revealed that Marvel Studios Blade will not be coming out next year. It's apparently this is the reboot that they were going to do Mahershala Ali, and apparently it's uh, already had two directors. It production and development delays, and now it looks like it is being removed from the schedule and not being put again anytime soon. So the question now is, okay, are we just basically gonna, put this to the side and not make it, because unfortunately it's very much, in keeping with much like Lucasfilm can't get a movie out. Marvel's got movies, but it seems like they can't get their projects lined up.
So not to eat up a lot, we still haven't gotten to our main topics, but
Yeah.
let me ask you guys as big Marvel fans, because I mean they hinted at Blade in a couple post credit scenes, right? Um,
Yes.
do you think Marvel has a problem? Maybe they shouldn't make these post credit scenes unless the project is underway. I mean, you know, kind of like the Captain Marvel post credit scene where suddenly she's in after Infinity War. We knew Endgame was coming, so they put that post credit scene in there. Like I said, do you think they need to stop putting in these post credit scenes if they don't know if a project's going to go anywhere, or does it matter?
I see. I'll let Dave answer in a moment, but I'll just say, uh, I don't know that you could remove them. They're an expected part of the Marvel experience now. So the idea that you're not going to have post-credit scenes, that
Endgame
you're not
did.
going to tease, well, but Endgame was the end. That was a culmination. That was a once event. They've done them since. So if they had stopped doing them after Endgame, I could agree with you. But the problem is they have done them since. So they're stuck with doing them because people expect it now. We should. They did it even for Deadpool and Wolverine. That's only ancillarily connected to Marvel Studios. So Dave.
They've not paid off every post credit scene or every in movie reference that they've given us so far, and so that's fine. I think like it's expected that they can't do that. Um, some of those things are intentional red herrings. I think it's like, ooh, we're gonna tease you with this thing, but we're not gonna really do anything with that, and it's just really for the hardcore fans. My issue is when you have a post credit scene that's just sort of done poorly. Like the Sony stuff is rough, and I've not seen the new Venom movie, but apparently there's one at the end of the new Venom movie which is just bad and confusing, and no, everyone's like, what does that even mean? I don't know what it means. It was existential. People were like, what is this? What does life mean? I don't know. So don't do that. Basically, just make it make sense. Give us something that we can understand, and teach us. We'll go along for the ride whether you pay it off or not.
Yeah. And no, it's unfortunate because first of all, Blade is like particularly Blade 1998 Blade, the original, was one of the seminal comic book movies. It helped revive that genre after Batman and Robin and a whole bunch of other bad movies in the 90s. So it made it serious. It's kind of a cultural touchstone for a lot of people. And the idea of getting two-time Academy Award winner Mahershala Ali playing the role, I mean, like, come on now, you can't make this work. So it's unfortunate, but also we go into the realities of this, kind of like we're saying about Star Wars. You keep announcing projects before you got them, ready to go, or you got them close to the finish line, and this is going to happen. You can't just simply announce, oh, 3 years from now, this will come out. Now, you were able to do that for phase one and two, but you know, you still knew you were going to make that kind of stuff, and the expectation wasn't there like it is now. So,
So
last bit of news before we get to, unless you got
nope,
Aaron.
I no, I like this next bit of news. I think it's
Okay,
fun.
so Skeleton Crew is less than 30 days now from coming to our TVs, maybe 35 days, I think, is what it's, before it premieres on Disney Plus. And the creators have teased up, that a certain character will be making his return to Star Wars. That character being Teak from Battle for Endor. Yep, Teak will be in Skeleton Crew.
The thing we can glean from this, we're gonna go back to Endor, kids. So
Huh?
does that mean would we see some Ewoks? Maybe. I mean, this might be kind of fun, but I think that's kind of cool that they're actually taking a nod at those. I mean, those Ewok movies are, except for Dave, they're kind of forgotten. You know.
Mhm.
I mean,
So,
but you know what
any other olds, right? The other olds are
I mean, they're kind of forgotten. I think it's kind of cool that it's like what Favreau did with taking a nod at the Hollywood or the holiday special. I think it's kind of cool that they're taking some nods to these things. So that's awesome. But like I said, I wonder if that means okay. This
maybe.
this leads into our next topic because I'm going. So
Can I
our
just also say very briefly, Teak from a vibes perspective makes sense for this? Maybe. Yes. This is aimed at kids.
yeah,
The Ewok movies were aimed at kids. I don't know. Just
but
want to say that.
but here's my thing. It's kind of linked to this because okay, so are there movies to be made, within or TV series or whatever to be made within the original trilogy? And I think 100% hands down yes. And actually, I think they could. I mean, this. So I'm going to take it to taking this thing with hope. I'm kind of hoping that this would be really neat Christmas present is if that what if Skeleton Crew is responsible for finding you know Darth Vader's helmet and somehow that gets I don't know. So there are stories the within the movies. All we've ever seen is just Han, Leia, and Luke's story. You know, there are other stories that absolutely can be told in a live action setting, um, and I think you only need to look. You don't have to look any farther than the comic books that have been written for ages. I mean, there's a whole series of Darth Vader comics, and now that we have James Earl Joy's voice, stored in an AI generator somewhere, um, I think you could very easily take some of those, like I said, those Darth Vader comic book series, you know, tell the story of how he got his red kyber crystal. These stories. Not a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people have read those comic books. I know I haven't read them all. I haven't read a whole lot of them. So you have those. You have, gosh, the Doctor Aphra, you know, comic book series. I think those are some stories that could be told that would be very effective in live action. So, is there stuff that could be done in the original trilogy? Hands down. And like I said, you only need to look as far as the comic books.
I guess one of the reasons why I was thinking about this question is because, you know, like I was saying to you before we started recording, there's this natural inclination to think, oh, well, Disney's making, we've seen lots of stories told in the prequel not just the movies, but Clone Wars. We've seen animated Rebels kind of straddles that line. Bad Batch was clearly in the post after of the prequel era. And then we've seen a lot of stuff in the sequel era, mostly all the stuff in the Mandoverse. But I wonder how interesting it'll be. First of all, besides Andor and Rogue One, we really don't get much either live action or animated Rebellion era periods, stuff set during the original trilogy. And I wonder if maybe Andor does kind of point to the idea of people want more of that. People will be interested in more of that, seeing different dynamics within the rebellion. One of the more interesting aspects of Rogue One was meeting Saul Guerrera, you know, after we've seen him in Clone Wars, and recognizing that the rebellion wasn't a monolith, it wasn't just the Rebel Alliance or just the good guys. There's differences of opinion. They're much more fractious. They're much more uh, difficult to get along, and each one of them is fighting the big war against the Empire in their own way. Uh, and so I think it creates an interesting dynamic where you could tell different stories and introduce different characters within that environment. The catch becomes how much of it you want to connect to the original trilogy
But
movies.
here's okay. So here's to before we let Dave jump in. Here's to my
Mhm.
what you just said. To my point is that take that what is it, the War of the Bounty Hunters or whatever, that was just that comic book
Mhm.
series that was just released. That not only is it within the original trilogy, it happens between Empire and Jedi where they're fighting over the carbon uh, frozen Han Solo, and you could bring back Kira because she's, Crimson Dawn. She actually gets Han Solo's. All you need, you don't need Harrison Ford. You just need the set piece. You know what I mean? And you'd have Boba Fett, and you would have all these cool bounty hunters. I think that would be a rockin' series. I think that would just be awesome. So Dave, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, basically the limitations that you have are you trying to avoid the original actors, um, and and not necessarily because you got CGI Luke and you have these things that you could do, um, but that's sort of like your line in the sand, which is like, okay, well, as long as this story doesn't involve Luke, Leia, or Han, you can tell it. Um, and so, yeah, I'm down. I'm into it. I like that era. That was the era that I'm with. I've liked Rogue One a great deal and Andor a great deal. And the post-war, the post-Return of the Jedi stuff that we've gotten with Mandalorian and Ahsoka, sort of falls into that same general era, and I've enjoyed all of that as well. So, um, I mean, the short answer for me is it's an easy yes. Um, but again, like with that caveat that is it we run into this with Mandalorian, or we were starting to run into it with Mandalorian and Grogu in season two, which is um, you get to a point in the story, and he's force sensitive. There's Jedi inklings. Okay, we're gonna reach out to the Jedi, and you get to a point where it's like, does it make sense for Luke not to be involved in some way here? And they hit that point in the story and they went with the CGI Luke and they decided that's how we're going to resolve that. And they brought him in. Um, and similar thing would apply to any series that they set in this timeline where if the stakes get bigger and bigger and bigger, at some point you're wondering, well, why isn't rebel leadership involved in this, or why isn't Luke or Leia
Well,
here,
and
and
that's
etc.
and that's why I think take it from the point of view of the empire, and your possibilities become more open. I mean, think about what about that time period between um, A New Hope and Empire when uh,
Yeah.
Vader realizes it was Luke who destroyed the Death Star. Now they don't interact with each other until Empire Strikes Back. So you could have a whole story of he's who, he's what now, and just Vader on this hunt, and I guess there's, like I said, there's a whole lot of stuff that you can do, especially if you tell it from the Empire's point of view or from those characters or the bounty hunters, things like that. I think that'd be really cool.
I think it creates an opportunity to tell new stories, and sometimes I think, particularly as we come out of the somewhat of the fallout of the acolyte, there is. this push pull, this tug between the fans' desire for new stuff and the fans' desire for the safe and comfortable. This is my Star Wars kind of vibe, and you're always going to have that dynamic between the two. But the idea of maybe you can tell new stories, kind of like Tony Gilroy is with Andor, that are still set within the safe and kind of comfortable, environment of the Age of the Rebellion, where you can still tell different stories, introduce new characters, have it be in such a way so that it doesn't negate or go
Well,
against anything we've seen, and just kind of go with it.
well, and let's what we talked about at the beginning of the episode. When we talked about Agatha all along a little bit like there.
Mhm.
There's so many of us that have no idea of who Agatha was as a character in the comic books. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And if you write a compelling story and you have interesting characters that you're invested in, um, well, it's Agents of Shield, right? I
Mhm.
mean, yeah,
Right.
Coulson. Sure, Coulson was in what, one or two movies before that came out. So, but I mean, he was kind of a B character. Um, the rest of them were all brand new, and it was compelling stories. It was fun. It was, you know, so yeah, I think you can do it as long as it's done well. And I think the argument is that Acolyte wasn't really done all that well. But
Mhm. I know it's without besmirching any of the fans that love it.
no,
Because we've had, we'll have differences of opinion on every single Star Wars project that exists and will exist.
and again,
I
kids,
do.
I like the Acolyte. I just have
Mhm.
some nitpicks. But anyway.
There are some nits to be picked up. I do think, when you start recognizing that, okay, maybe you do need to, again, and then this is where we get into the whole what exactly does Lucasfilm want to do with Star Wars? Do you want to make movies? Do you want to make series? Do you want to do both? What are you doing? Where are you doing? You know, whether it's the Lando Calrissian project or whatever they're trying to make. At some point, you just got to pick something and do something. And yeah, you might end up with something like Book of Boba Fett or The Acolyte, which is appreciated by few and not liked by some. You can end up with some dead end or that at the start people were kind of lukewarm, but now I think everybody's just over the moon for. So you could have different dynamics. It's just, I think at some point, Lucasfilm just has to have some kind of huevos, to put it that term, and just some gumption and go, let's make something. And if we set it in this environment, so be it. We can hire talented writers to make sure that we don't negate anything that's happened before,
And I
and that
would
we're not talking ourselves into a corner.
again, I'd take it beyond the original trilogy. I think there are stories to be told in a live action standpoint, beyond the original trilogy. I mean, again, I want to know how Maz Kanata got Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. You know, Kylo Ren. Getting all the artifacts he got. Vader's. How do you get Vader's helmet? That sort of thing. Um, so again, I think there's and all you need to do is put a helmet on the guy. It doesn't have to be Adam Driver. Um, Now, the other question that we had was, are you cool with animated, Han? And we can still talk about both these at the same time. Han, Luke, and Leia in an animated fashion. Can you tell those stories? 100%. I'm fine with that. Like I said, I've taken the stance where if it's live action and it don't look like Harrison Ford, I can't buy that. But my upbringing, you know, watching Batman on Scooby Doo, that was different voices, doing Batman. I was fine. It works for me. So if I know it's Han, Luke, and Leia, and we do a pretty good job at getting voices somewhat close, then I'm cool with that because there are some great stories that could be told. The one I would start pitching to people would just be the one throwaway line in Empire. Well, the bounty hunter that we ran into in Ord Mantell changed my mind. What happened there? There was some adventure that, I mean, gave Han like the oh cruds. So I think there's a lot of stuff that could be done, and I think animated form would be awesome.
Yeah,
Dave, Oh, sorry.
Dave, go ahead. No, no, go ahead.
I think Fredo had something to say, so I'll just let him go.
No, I was just gonna say, and I think this is one of those ideas because you're right. There was such a big issue with Alden Ehrenreich stepping into the role of Han Solo, even though he did a good job. He
That I
did a
didn't
really
have a
good
problem
job.
with. That I did not have a problem
Right,
with because it was
right.
before the original trilogy.
Younger.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, but I do think, particularly, I mean, look, Harrison Ford is in his 80s, Mark Hamill's in his 60s, 70s, Carrie Fisher's no longer with us. There's still a lot of stories in those characters that you want to hear about, you want to see about, that you want to talk about. Look, we still have yet to find out how Luke set up his first Jedi training temple, how that fell apart. I'm sure in some instances that could be told via books, but you know what? You have another medium where you could tell it. I'd love an animated series where Mark Hamill can come in and voice old man Luke, so to speak, and kind of give us some of his further adventures before he ended up in Octo. Again, it gives you the opportunity, and we've seen Lucasfilm lean into this for Star Wars with Visions. So that's the other advantage. You can tell stories of those characters that don't necessarily have to be 7 seasons of 20 episodes like Clone Wars was, or 4 seasons of 20 episodes like Rebels was. You could do it an hour and a half animated movie, and get the best voice actors, do as close as you can, and boom, here you go. And it's another story. And because it's not violating in a certain way our sense of who these characters are, because they don't look, I mean, they're going to look animated, so um, we can jump, our brain will better accept them than if it was, say, Alden Ehrenreich or, Andrew Garfield playing Luke, or, whoever playing them. It makes it a lot easier, I think. So it's a good way to tell stories.
The the ultimate test here, really, I think, is going to be the mega crossover movie, which is supposed to occur post Ahsoka season 2 and post all these Mandalorian Grogu adventures. Um, and and I say that because if Thrawn is threatening the galaxy, I don't see how you don't fold in Luke and Leia in minimum. Um, I guess Han could sit on the sidelines, but I don't really see that. So, like, I think the big three would need to appear, and the only way to do that would be that whole digital thing. Um, and I'm okay with that. I think like that makes more sense as long as like even even knowing that I'm going to hate how it looks and be bothered by it and have the uncanny valley thing going on. Uh, I'd prefer that to them just like writing them out of the story because it's hard. Um, and it's like no, those they would need to be there. They would need to be involved in all of that. And I think like that to me, and the reason like I keep going back to this era, and I love that we're playing in that era right now, frankly, because there's so much story there. How do you get from Return of the Jedi to Force Awakens? And how much of it would match Heir to the Empire in that original story, and how much of it wouldn't match that original story. I'm going back and I'm reading those books right now just for that very reason. I'm like, I want to see how it was originally conceived because we're going to be getting a version of that story in some form. Um, and again, it's probably not in Ahsoka season 2, but maybe a little bit. They can have that all set, you know, in that, you know, twin galaxy. And it can just be Ahsoka trying to figure out how to get back. Um, it could be that. Um, but the movie that in theory is going to happen and all the Mando groundwork that they're laying to lead into the crossover movie, um, I think that's going to be, it has to be along these lines. It has to fold in the original characters and the original storylines.
See, and I think you can actually get away with not having them easier than if it was in the original trilogy era. Because I mean, when you have the New Republic, the rebellion. I'm sorry, kids. This is a uh, audio podcast. I'm going to use visuals, but the rebellion was like this. A small section of people, and then the New Republic becomes so much bigger. And so I don't think you need to see Leia on screen. You can make references. You can also, maybe Luke was off doing his Jedi stuff, and not involved in the governmental order of things. This was ultimately, and if you think about in Rebels, it was ultimately, it was Thrawn versus, the Ghost Crew,
Mhm.
really. So I mean, yeah, Leia came into Rebels once, so and that was my whole thing, is that even I said the rebellion was that small, but it was still a bunch of people. We're just seeing it through the eyes of really four people, and
Right.
there was so many other people involved. So I think when we get to there, I don't think you need to have Han, Luke, and Leia in um, in what we're gonna get with Thrawn versus everybody. So
Again, like though, I think at the end of the day, for me personally, I would prefer
and
they do
I
the digital thing than try to come up
and
with
I would
some
say
silly reason for them not to be there.
I would have no problem with that either, because I had no problem with young Indiana Jones um, in the Dial of Destiny. Um, I really
Pretty
didn't.
decent, wasn't
I
it? Yeah.
didn't have a problem with Luke Skywalker in the Mandalorian. I think they just hurried. I think Leia would have been better if they just. I think it probably seemed like it was an afterthought or a hurry up. You know, So I think if they would have had a couple more months on it, it would have been a better shot. Um, so yeah, I think they can, and I wouldn't have a problem with it, but either way. But I don't know. Like I said, but again, if we're going to tell the story within, tell stories within the original trilogy and an animated series with Han, Luke, and Leia, I think the opportunities are all over the place. Again, you can just go to the comic books, or you can go to the books, you know, um, and tell some of those stories. Start weaving in some of the legends material. So it's not like you have to recreate the wheel. There's some great stories to be presented.
I think the distinction that I try to make, I think, is that if it's a big enough story and if it's galaxy changing, I want them there. And that whether it's during the OT era, whether it's during the Thrawn Ahsoka era, um, whenever, um, if it's big enough and it makes sense for the story and the story has led us there and we're like, okay, gosh, they really should be there. Um, then yes, put them in digitally and change their voices and do the things that you have to do. Um, Otherwise, yeah, don't try not to include them. To be honest, when like I loved your bounty hunter idea, and there's so many thousands of stories you could tell that have nothing to do with them, and I'm all in. I agree with that. Um, just don't paint yourself into a corner
No,
where you have to have them, or it's obvious why they're not there. It begins to
I would say,
distract.
you could, in an animated format, you could very much like, you know, so the Young Jedi Adventures, let's not have it for that young of an age group, but let's take it in like the Rebels or Clone Wars type thing. You could have, you know, Luke's Jedi Academy, you know, type of story being told in an animated form like that. I think that would be perfect. We've talked about the Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire. You could have Tales of the Rebellion. I hope that they're going to do that at some time, where some of these stories, again, could be told in just little small vignettes. So, and I would have absolutely 100% no problem with Han, Luke, or Leia being in there with some pretty close. And actually, you know what's going to be kind of funny? I'm starting to find myself like in the Lego stuff where they use Mark Hamill to voice Luke Skywalker. That bothers me now because they don't seem to do much with the voice to make it. He sounds like an old guy, So I would actually prefer them to find somebody who can just do a pretty good, Luke. So anyway.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting idea. I mean, there's still an appetite for these characters. There's still an appetite for this timeline, this time period in Star Wars. Like I was just looking at Wikipedia to see what events are happening because, Mandalorian and Grogu were happened 4 years after the Battle of Endor. No, Endor, I
Endor.
think,
Okay.
or Jakku. Yeah, so it makes me wonder if maybe like this is why they may not be around because there may be multiple events happening. Again, there's ways to a good writer can write a way around why Luke, Leia, Han can't be everywhere all at once. But they just kind of make a big
Right.
point that a lot of these characters
Uh,
are influences that they freeze
you froze, but
that they
it
can really
was when you
use.
turned to look at the game, so it was funny. We were like wondering if something exciting just happened. So
No, no, nothing. But yeah, no, anyway. So long story short, I think there's ways to tell more stories and I'll be all for it. So I know people, not everybody likes animated stuff, but I think in some ways that might appease some people. Not necessarily, particularly those who don't necessarily like the Uncanny Valley stuff. So
right on. Well, y'all can tell us what you think about any of these topics. Like I said, hit us up on social media or if you see us out in the wild. But we'll say if you're listening to this, please make sure that you go out and vote. It is one of those things where I think this country takes that privilege for granted. And I understand that not everybody's going to vote the same way I do, but that's how you get things done. And if you just, make your voice heard, use it at the ballot box. So make sure you get out and vote. Here endeth my soapbox. But until then, happy Halloween, by the way. And we will say who dat?
Who dat?
with that,
And everybody have a great week.
McConkey.